All right, let's try the next guest here.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I was just checking because my mic was acting funky yesterday on one of these.
Oh no, I can hear you just fine. Awesome.
Okay,
Are you a
thank
Christian?
goodness. Yes, I forgot the term. When you just get back into Christianity, that term, I do not know the actual term,
When
but
when,
yes,
when you get back in,
basically
or
yes.
it's when you first become a Christian, like a newborn Christian, like a babe in Christ, or
When you get
where
back
or were you,
into it,
or
I was,
oh, so you were a
oh, sorry, go
backslider.
on. Basically, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I got you. You're a prodigal son.
Yes, that.
Yeah. Oh, that's the term you were looking for.
Yes, I
Okay,
believe
yes,
so.
yes, yes. The parable of the prodigal son, the guy who gets who goes and takes his father's money, his part of his inheritance, and he goes and he squanders it, and then he comes back.
Yeah,
Right?
basically.
Awesome.
Yep.
So it's good to have you on. What on the background would you like to talk about?
I'll just talk about two and three, and then we can talk about one. If that's okay.
Yeah, for sure. So number three, do you think being gay or transgender or anything like that is wrong?
I would say this. I have read all of. Basically, when I became Christian again, I decided to read all the Bible first to know what I might be getting into. And if it's wrong to be gay, then it's also wrong to eat bacon, pork in general. It's wrong to wear to clothes, and yeah, specifically, I don't think it's wrong just as much as any other sin's wrong. If that makes any sense.
Do
Does
you think
that?
that it's something that people should not do? Because sin is something that
Does,
people ought not do, right?
yes, but we also live in technically yes. So we
Okay.
also say, from what I understand about the Bible, the that discussion is kind of complicated when it comes to homosexuality because there are some people who say when it says do not sleep with men, it means sleep means boys instead of men. So that's yeah, it could be referring to PDF files instead of men.
Yeah, so the I and I forget the original Hebrew language for it, but basically in the original Hebrew they did not have specific terminology for you know, homosexuality, bisexuality and things like that. They just kind of had them all under the same umbrella term. So when we see something like this, we can understand that we need more context from what is happening and what's going on,
Yes,
more cultural terms and historical points need to be looked at as well because the terms are ambiguous in the sense that yes, you could derive that a man should not sleep with a man, but you could also take it as a man should not sleep with a younger lad. Now
yeah,
this
that's
is
how I've always
interesting
interpreted it.
because from my understanding in the more Hebrew or original Hebrew, it's more leaning towards anything that isn't man and woman, man, woman, and multiple women even. So it would cover homosexuality as well as you know
Hmm.
pedophile. But the passage in Romans in the New Testament, which was written in Greek, we definitely have the support of the historical knowledge that in the culture that Paul was writing in, they did have that practice of older men taking younger lads as quote unquote apprentices and doing things with them that they probably
Yeah.
shouldn't have done. And so when Paul is writing down according to, you know, his language and his cultural surroundings, that that is definitely something that we could definitely strongly say that is what he was talking to when he was saying that.
Okay. You know a lot about the Bible. That's very cool.
Oh, thank you. I
That
appreciate that.
yeah, I just say that because a lot of people who are talking with the Bible too don't really know much. They just know what the preacher says, and that's all.
No, I could come. Trust me, I understand exactly what you're saying. I think that
Yeah.
especially for someone who believes in the Bible, I think that it's kind of wild that there are so many people that say they believe it yet they haven't read it. You know?
Yeah, like there's a good example with number two. You said, in Jesus, if I'm not mistaken, Jesus himself said that a man should submit himself to his wife, and the wife should submit herself to her husband in the name of the heavens or something of sort. But saying you're supposed to treat her equally in the eyes of the Lord. So the
I
idea
don't
that man,
I don't recall Jesus saying anything about that. What I recall as far as the
he might
teachings
not have
of
been.
men and women's roles, especially when it comes to marriage, is Jesus just said that it's the role of a man and a woman to marry. But it was Paul that we get most of our roles from, because Paul talks about how man was made in the image of God, but woman in the image of man. And so therefore man is to love his wife, but his wife is to submit to him.
Hmm. Personally, I believe in the sense that man and woman should both submit to themselves because we are the same flesh, and you should not abuse yourself. If that makes any sense.
Sure, and I think that that would be a really um, good way to look at it when we see terms like, the man and the woman shall become one flesh and stuff like that. To be like, you are now one unit. You should not do things that hurt your own unit. But then I do think that,
Yeah.
if we go through God's law, especially like in the Old Testament, we can see that the women, or that the value of women actually has a price on it, and it's less than what the price is for men. They are
Yeah.
devalued when it comes to if anyone has sexual relations with them, and it causes their value to go down, so that if that man decides they no longer
Yeah.
want them, they can't just their options are limited, kind of after that, and they're just kind of let go. Um, and
Yeah.
as far as like the protections that go for them, it's not really the most free or equal when it comes to their consent. And then when we get to the New Testament and see passages like women submit to your husbands, women should stay silent, and women should go and ask their husbands, for knowledge of things that they hear in church and stuff, we see that
Yeah.
very clearly the Bible has a role for women which is under men, and it tends to blame all the way back to Adam and Eve.
Yeah, I will say, just like every piece of literature of that time, you do also have to remember back then they also treated people very differently. And it's not
Yes.
always acceptable under the modern norm. Like, no one's gonna go out and throw bricks at a gay person.
Well, maybe.
Hopefully not.
We've even in the United States until recently, yes, things like that were happening. If you go around and
Oh
look
yeah.
at like bandsermon.com and stuff like that, or bandpreaching.com and websites like that, you'll see a bunch of sermons of pastors. And a common thread through a lot of them is very anti-gay, very homophobic type of messages and stuff like that, sermons. And a lot of them will talk about how in their younger days here in the States, they used to go gay bashing. And that they would go around, and how sad it is that they can't do that anymore, where they could just pick someone out who who they thought was gay and attack them. So this is something that people alive today in the United States were able to do when they were younger,
Yeah, sadly.
which is horrific. And then there are other parts in the world where people just simply for
Literally.
saying I love another man or I love another woman are being executed, and I think that that's absolutely repulsive, don't you?
Yeah.
I'm glad we
My
agree on that.
girlfriend's bi, so actually every girlfriend I've been bi was kind of funny.
Yeah, yeah,
I
and the
don't know
thing
why,
is,
but
like,
yeah.
it's just the way you are, and I don't see anything wrong
Yeah.
with, as long as you are a part of an adult consensual relationship, I don't see the
Agreed.
problem. And I do wonder when there are passages that talk about men sleeping with men and it being an abomination and it being worthy of death. If that was indeed, like, let's say that it wasn't ambiguous, and let's say we knew for a fact that was the law God gave to his people, do you think that that's something that you would think should be followed?
Honestly, no.
So, how is it that you can reconcile saying that you believe in this book when you go against the morals and laws that God, seems to lay out very straightforward in his text?
I don't have a precise answer to that, honestly.
Okay, yeah, no, it's all right if you don't have an answer. It's okay. I
I
hope it's
know
something
that
that you
I'm
think
not going to
about.
try to bullcrap my way. Bullcrap an answer. I'm going to be straight honest.
Well, I hope that you give these points some thought at least.
I will.
And so I'm sure you've heard about it. Other people talk about it and stuff like that. But what about your positions when it comes to the biblical God allowing things like slavery, both of chattel slavery and sex slavery in the Bible. How is it that you can reconcile lining yourself up with this book and this God when those are the things that are allowed?
Okay, the sex slavery part, I do not fully remember reading in Leviticus, Numbers, or Deuteronomy. But and I don't think it was read about child slavery at all either. From what I've read at least, and I read all of Leviticus in a day, so my memory might not be the best, just because that's a thick book.
No, I understand. These are the law codes, so they're very
Yeah,
compact, and there's a lot of information in there.
yes. But from what I remember, you can disagree with me or correct me about this, but from what I do remember, it talks about that slavery was never really a full on, you weren't born into it and you could quote unquote buy it. You had only a set amount of years as a slave, kind of like indentured servitude, but you could choose to be a slave forever, if I remember. I may be mistaken, but that's what I remember at least. That was selling. That's what I interpreted it as at least.
Okay, no, I can definitely understand where maybe the confusion is. So, the Bible does allow indentured servitude as well. It also allows for chattel slavery. So, if you look in like Exodus 21, you'll see more like the very few verses are talking about Hebrew to Hebrew indentured servitude. This is what you were talking about, where people
Oh, okay.
choose of their own free will to take on like a contract of serving a certain amount of years, usually to cover some kind of a debt or resource that was provided to the individual that they were unable to pay back at the time. So they choose to pay it back over, entering in some kind of service contract for X amount of years. You are correct that one could choose to remain in that role forever, and the way that we see this in Exodus 21 is that if a Hebrew man becomes an indentured servant to another Hebrew man, and the master gives him a wife, probably of one of his female servants, and they have children and stuff, when the time comes up for the man to go free, he cannot take his family with him because they are still belonging to the master. So if he wants to stay with his family, he must make a public declaration of love for his master and says that he wants to stay with his family, to which then the master will take him before the elders and pierce his ear with an awl, which
Yes, that.
signifies to everyone that he chose to remain in this role and that he is in this role for the rest of his life. So that's where we see the indentured servitude for that. When we
Okay.
see passages like Leviticus 25, 44 through 46, we see the relations of the Hebrews to non-Hebrews. God is saying that if they want to have slaves, then it is of the non-Hebrews that they can enslave. They can acquire them by purchase, and that they can get them from the nations that are around them, as well as the strangers that live with them. Those are the people that they can get slaves from, and they can buy them, and that they will be their legal property forever, and that they can pass them on as inheritance for their kids to also own as legal property. And then at the very end of verse 46, it gives a protection to fellow Hebrews, but again leaves out any protections for the non-Hebrews that he just said you can have slaves as. And then when it comes to the sex slavery, in Deuteronomy 21, chapter or verses 10 to 14, it describes how if you go to war and you win, and God, helps you win, and you notice among the captives a beautiful woman and you desire her, you can take her home with you, and you basically strip her of her identity and her culture by taking off her nails and shaving her head, and then leaving her a full month to mourn for her parents before you can go into her as a husband. And I can pull it up if you like, but there is a Jewish source that talks about, the Torah and the text and what this means back in the time. And they're saying that the reason why she was left alone for a full month was to ensure that she was, in fact, not pregnant with another man's child.
Yeah, makes
And
sense.
then, yeah, so they would go in, be her husband, and she shall be his wife. But if he isn't satisfied with her, he can just basically kick her out and not have to give her anything for what he did to her, because she is now seen as devalued. So I count that to be sex slavery, and I also
Yeah,
see,
that
yeah, you see what I'm
yeah,
saying?
I agree.
Yeah, I think that, I think if you go to another place and take a woman who is a prisoner of war, again, and this woman probably wasn't fighting you. You know, she's the captive of the
Yes,
guy, or she was the wife or the daughter of the guy
against the
that you
Geneva
offed. You
Convention.
know, yeah, and then you take her back to your place, and you know, hair and nails and stuff like that. That's a big part of where you're from, especially for women. You know, the part of their culture, it
Yeah.
signifies everything about them, basically, when it
Oh yeah.
comes to, you know, the socialization factor. So to strip her from
In
all
that
that,
culture, it's very much. Well, back then, very much so.
yeah, and then saying that if you're not satisfied with her, you just let her go free, and you can't sell her or do anything, and you can't make her a slave because she's just devalued, because you devalued her. She's not worth anything anymore, and I think that that's just a wild way to view this.
Yeah, there's no way. There's a reason a lot of pastors cherry pick of the Old Testament when it comes to those laws.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember which pastor it was. There was only one pastor I've ever heard address this, and he made it sound like, oh, he rescued her from this terrible place, and he took this woman and gave her a new and better life. If anything, she should be
Nope.
grateful. She should be grateful for the opportunity to marry a Hebrew man over the wicked culture that she was a part of before. And
Honestly,
yeah,
um,
it's wild.
yeah, that would remind me of a little thing. Someone, basically, someone tried to justify slavery to a black person, saying, "At least you now worship the true God."
Oh, I've unfortunately had to talk to many black Christians on here that will defend slavery, will absolutely defend these actions in here, and say that no, if that's
Irony.
what God said, that's what God said, and it's terrible.
Yeah, I'm Ukrainian, and a lot of my ancestors were slaves to the Turks, and I've never defended slavery because of that one fact.
Yeah,
Not
because you
fun
know
fact,
it's
but
it's
anyway.
because you know it's horrific. It's dehumanizing. It's absolutely
Yeah,
atrocious.
yeah.
So so when I see things like this, and then I see passages that talk about, you know, the people that are not of your own kind, those people you can own as legal property forever and pass them on to your own kids and stuff. I see that, and I can't help but say this is both chattel and sex slavery that is allowed by this supposedly good and perfect God. And I don't know how that
hmm
is compatible, or how people can say, I follow the Bible God, and then this is what we see the Bible God allowing.
Most of, from what I understand, at least from other Christians in my town, those normally say they are not Jewish or they do not follow the Jewish laws, even though they do. I.e., they follow the Ten Commandments. We follow the Ten Commandments, which is Jewish law.
Yeah, and
Yes,
and
we
that,
follow
I
the
think
laws
that's
Jesus
cherry picking to its
instituted.
finest, don't you?
Kind of, but yeah.
Yeah, being like, oh, the Old Testament, it doesn't matter anymore, but the Ten Commandments, oh, the Ten Commandments, you know,
But those,
no,
oh,
the law of
yeah.
God doesn't matter, but the Ten Commandments, oh man.
Well, yeah, even I agree with that.
And then also we can look at passages. I believe it's Matthew 5. I could be wrong. I'll check. But Matthew 5, where it's Jesus himself talking, and he says that the law of Moses is what he's talking about when he says the law, because that's the law that they were under. Was
hmm
he says that the law will never or will not pass until heaven and earth pass away. He's saying that until heaven and earth passes, that yes, it's Matthew 5, starting in 17. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law of the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth passes away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until it is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and the teachings others to do the same will be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. So Jesus himself is saying that this law stands until heaven and earth passes, because only then will all things be accomplished. And heaven and earth are still here. There are still things that Jesus said that he's going to do that he hasn't done. So not all has been
Yes.
accomplished. So that means that we are to continue to teach the old law still, the law of the prophets.
Hmm.
It's supposed to be held. So even these laws that talk about allowing slavery and talk about, allowing all these other atrocious things still stand, at least according to the mouth of Jesus.
Yeah, basically correct. The only main difference I know between Christians now and Jews is Jews have to do a lot of, I'm trying to think of the correct terms. I guess processes to be cleansed of sin, while in Christianity we just have to accept Jesus in our heart, and we're quote unquote born again, if I'm not
Yes, yes.
mistaken.
In Romans 10, I believe. Let's see.
Do you have an actual Bible with you?
I do have an actual Bible.
Dang, commitment.
Let's see, Romans
Classic.
10, starting in verse 9. Because if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For one believes with the heart, leading to righteousness, and one confesses with the mouth, leading to salvation. The scripture says, not one who believes in him will be put to shame. For there is no distinction between Jew or Greek. The same Lord is Lord of all, and the generation and is generous to all who call on him. For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved.
Yes. And one other thing I'm going to say is there is a big difference between Judaism and Christianity. Judaism is a lot more of a closed religion, if I understand correctly, because in Jewish customs, you cannot become a Jew no matter how much you practice Judaism. Like you can't become an actual Jew, but in Christianity, anyone's allowed to be Christian and to partake in the customs of Christianity, which is a big difference, if I'm not mistaken. I might be. Like I said, I just started relearning Christianity myself.
Yeah, so like Christianity itself is it basically came as like a spin-off from Judaism, which
Yes.
kind of was a spin-off of the Canaanite beliefs and
Yep.
polytheism, because Yahweh used to be originally a Canaanite storm and
The storm god.
a storm
Hmm.
god and a god of war. So he was very big on showing force and stuff like that, especially through nature. And if you haven't looked into some old Canaanite legends and myths about Yahweh, I would recommend that you do so. They're actually kind of cool. There's a book.
Yahweh and Elohim are different gods, technically. The
So
God
so
of
the
the New
El
Testament is different. From what I
um
understand. Kind of sort of.
I think if you're honest, yes, you would have to say that the God of the New Testament is definitely different than the God of the Old Testament. But
Yeah.
the Elohim is basically like the council of gods. It's basically a bunch of gods together. They were held by the God of gods, which was El. He was basically the father god. Yahweh is one of his children.
Nice. Hmm.
Yeah, it's
Let's
it's it's all
see.
pretty cool how it all connects.
Mhm. I mean, I
I,
will state this as a Christian who knows about, well, religion and all. How it never just comes out of nowhere. It comes from all other religions and branches out. I'm able to, I would say, unlike a lot of Christians, I'm able to dissect my belief system from actuality, if that makes any sense. Like, I believe in evolution. I believe in, well, everything came about, but I still also personally believe in Christianity more so because it gives me security and safety, if that makes sense.
no, I trust me, I understand, and I'm glad that you can kind of separate the differences in your mind to be able to acknowledge, the evidence for things like evolution, but then
Yeah.
also be like, hey, this is something that I believe. I'm convinced that it's true.
Yeah, I'm like, hey, if it's not true, oh well, because personally, my belief is if it's not hurting others, believe in it. Like heck, if you want to believe in spaghetti God, go ahead. I'm
Yeah,
good.
I agree. As long as you're not hurting anyone through your beliefs, then I see no issue with that. But I do
Hmm.
think, like, we can see there are Christians that are hurting
Oh
people with
yeah.
it. And so to those Christians, I want those Christians to be called out. But I understand that there are definitely, there's so many different kinds of Christians, and it really
Oh
all
yeah.
depends to the individual.
I'm just gonna state one thing. Christians who force their Christianity on non-Christians are literally going against what Jesus said. Because I'm gonna be paraphrasing because I cannot remember the actual quote. But basically, Jesus told his disciples, "Go to the other lands and preach the word. And if you are met with hostility and hatred, just slowly retreat." Basically, if you meet people who don't want to convert, just want go on your merry way and find someone else.
I think this is a very interesting thing this guy just said. Force is only a measure of your resistance, and I think that that is an amazing way to justify forcing whatever you're trying to force. It's crazy,
Mm.
it's only forced because you're resisting it. Imagine if someone was assaulting somebody and said that,
Yeah.
well, sorry, Your Honor, it was only force. I only forced myself on her because she resisted me. Like, that's
I
wild.
would say, geez, let me get my glasses because I cannot see what that person's name is. Uh,
Sure, but but he does want to chat to you. So in a couple minutes, I'll let you go so that I can talk to him before I have to go because I have work
yeah, I
soon.
might actually have to go now. I have to do some things for my parents.
All right, yeah, for sure.
It's been nice talking to you.
It's been
You're
nice
definitely
talking to
gonna
you too.
follow for me.
Yeah, I
You're
gave you a
cool.
follow back. You're welcome back anytime, and I
Nice.
hope you have a good day.
You do too.
All right, take care.
You too.
Well, that was a good conversation. Jesus save. Go ahead, send in a request. We'll chat. I probably got about 10 minutes before I gotta get going. So yeah, I'll go ahead and send in a request, and I'll let you give your position, and then we'll chat about it. All right, cool. I see you. There we go. Cool. All right, hey man, how you doing?
I'm doing right. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. So yeah, what would you like to talk about?
There was a lot of stuff you were saying, man, that just not accurate. There's just so much I don't even know where to begin. So much
Okay,
I don't even know where to begin.
okay. Well, but before you begin, you're
Oh,
kind of coming in and out just a little bit.
I,
So I'm gonna do my best to follow along. But if I interrupt, it's because I missed something you said, and I would like you to repeat it. So, what do you think that I did wrong or said wrong?
okay, we'll stop. All
Hello?
right. So, where do you
Oh,
want
okay.
me to
There you
address
are.
your
Okay.
points? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. I can hear you now. I think I lagged for a second, but yeah. So yeah. What do you think I said that was wrong, and how would you like to correct it?
Well, there's a lot. Like, for instance, you saying that the Old Testament God in the land of Canaan before, I guess, what you want to say, the Torah, was Yahweh was a storm god. Yahweh is just an old Hebrew word for Lord. And when people, because the Hebrew people began with Eber in the genealogy is where the Hebrew name came from and the language came from. So when somebody uses the word Yahweh in reference to Lord, that's all they're doing. And it's recorded in the history of the Jews many times where they would worship other gods and call them Yahweh and call them Lord, in which God actually judged them for. And saying, I'm not an idol that made with hands. So he already mentioned that, like, so using that as an argument, oh, God used to be this. No, that's not being intellectually honest, because it's recorded that these people were doing this idolatry and worshiping God, Yahweh, by the usage of carving idols in which he judged them. So I mean, like, there's just so many things that you said that were just not accurate.
So okay, I hear what you're saying.
Like,
So the reason why I said what I said is because I did look into this, and Yahweh is considered to be one of the lesser gods in Canaanite panthology. You can go ahead and actually look at Dr. Francescus Stravoulakopoulos' book, God an Anatomy, which actually goes into the history of the God of the Bible, where he originated from, and it even has some of the older Canaanite myths. Wait, I'm almost done. I'm almost done. And so you can see, how we get to the evolution from Yahweh, the storm deity in Canaan, to how we have evolved to what we have now. When you're saying that Yahweh is translated to be Lord, yes, because the Hebrew verb to be has been replaced with Lord when we write it in English, in the English translations, because we are referring to when God says his name is I am that I am, the Hebrew verb to be, we put that as Lord, because it's indicating the divine name of I am that I am.
And like I said, when you date the artifact or that says Yahweh in reference to a Canaanite god, when you date that, it shows that exactly in the place in history where the Hebrew people in the land of Canaan forsook the commands of God and started worshiping false gods in a way and calling them Yahweh. It's even recorded in Isaiah and in God judging these people who were using his name and worshiping and profaning his name by worshiping him around Asherah poles. That they were calling Yahweh and they were worshiping God in that way. And it's like, when did I ever command this? When did I say to do this? And this is what was happening in there. So your source that you just cite, when I bring up 15 sites, or all the citations from all different type of people for 2,000 years, what then? Because history shows that this is what happened, and this is something that they did and were judged for. It doesn't, you got a chicken and egg thing coming here.
I don't think history shows that they were judged for it. I think history shows what cultures believed in what gods and how we can actually show and trace the certain belief in a certain god and how it affected multiple cultures.
Yeah, and like I said, when you're appealing to a Canaanite statue being found and it says Yahweh on it, that you're not even looking at the dating of it that says, okay, yeah, back in the 1400s BC, people forsook Yahweh, the one who rescued them out of Egypt, and started worshiping him in the ways of the Canaanite people, which is specifically what he said not to do, and yet people did it anyways. And it was recorded in the history of the Jews and in the prophets who were warning these people to stop doing it.
So you're saying that the Canaanites made an idol of Yahweh, and Yahweh isn't an original Canaanite god. They just kind of ripped him off and were saying it?
I'm going to try to explain it again, okay? I'm going to try and explain this again.
Sure. I'm sorry. You've got a horrible amount of background noise. I really am trying. I promise.
Okay. The Hebrew people. Do you agree that the Hebrew people were in Egypt? Yes or no?
I have no issue against some of the Hebrews being in Egypt, but I don't think the Hebrew nation ever, as a whole, was ever under servitude for Egypt. I don't think we have enough evidence to say that.
Okay. When you say Hebrew nation, they were a nation until they left Egypt.
Okay. So when I'm talking about the Hebrew nation, I'm just talking about all of them together. So no, I think that definitely there were probably some Hebrews that made their residence in Egypt, but no, I don't think all of Hebrews were ever in Egypt at the same time.
Okay. Now, do you see a distinction between Hebrew people and Israel?
Only because you and I both agree that it wasn't until after they, quote unquote, it left, according to the Bible, that they became a nation.
Okay. And also that those who were in Egypt were all descendants of Jacob. Those are the people who were in Egypt. Other people who are descended, those are the only ones who were in Egypt, right? And other than that, if you the line before that, other people who were descended from the time of Eber after the flood, all those other people were still living in the land of Canaan, but it was only the people who were descendants from Jacob who went down into Egypt, and from there, they became a nation. You understand that?
Sure. What does this have to do with Yahweh being a Canaanite god, then?
Yahweh was not a Canaanite god. Okay? What was happening is that people, knowing the name of God, worshipped God in the practice of the Canaanites, which is by creating an idol. And they said, hey, I worship Yahweh. And they make an idol, and they write Yahweh on it, and they say, this is Yahweh. And that's what they were doing that was wrong. That was called idolatry, and God told them, don't do that. That's not how you worship me. You understand what I'm saying?
I do. I understand completely what you're saying, and I agree to it from a biblical perspective. But we can also see that God called Abraham from the land of Canaan, and the reason why Abraham acknowledged was because Yahweh was one of their gods in their pantheon. He was seen as a lesser god. But I will agree that historically we can see that the worship of Yahweh went up a bit when he was adopted as Israel's main god, because suddenly he had a little bit more importance, was a little bit more relevant. He was the main god of one of these other nations that was growing. So therefore, recognizing that he was a god, they built statues. I don't see the problem.
Which was idolatry.
Okay.
That doesn't mean. But what you're saying, your argument that you made with the other guy is that Yahweh, everything that the Yahweh who spoke to Moses and spoke to Aaron is a amalgam of a Canaanite god that was just a story that just got spun from a Canaanite god.
I'm sorry, I missed what you said. You can you repeat the last sentence you said?
The way in which you're describing it is that the Torah was an amalgam created from the story of a mythology from a Canaanite god. That's the way that you're making it out. You've got a chicken and egg issue.
I'm not trying to say that like the Bible is a combination of Torah and Canaanite legends. I'm saying that we can see how cultures were influenced by the belief in certain gods, one of them being Yahweh. Do you not think that that's true?
The existence of God predating the Torah, yes, there was an influence in people, but that doesn't change the fact nor invalidate what is recorded in the Torah about what he did for those people in Egypt.
Okay, I'm not really talking about what the Torah per se claims. I'm talking about just historical, what we can see from culture and history. The Canaanites worshipped a lesser deity named Yahweh. Abraham followed that lesser deity, Yahweh, when he believed that God called him out from the land of Canaan to make a nation of his own, from Abraham's descendants. And when Israel made Yahweh their number one god, then other nations started to pay more attention to this god because he was seen as one of the main gods for one of their, neighbors or enemies, whichever ones they were seen to whichever nation we're talking about at the time. But Yahweh, according to history, we know is older than the Torah. We know is older than the nation of Israel per se, and we know that he started off as a lesser deity for the Canaanites.
For Canaanites, yeah, but he was the main deity for the people from Eber that descended from Noah from the land in the people of Eber, who were called Hebrews.
So we agree then with what I was saying to the other guest.
I will grant agreement for the intents and purposes. Okay. Now you do believe that the descendants of Jacob, even if all of the Hebrew people, descendants from Eber, even if all of them were not in Egypt, but the descendants of Jacob definitely were. Do you agree with that?
Biblically, yes, I do.
Okay. Do you believe historically that the Jewish people, the Hebrew people, that a great many of Hebrew people were in the land of Egypt?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay, so how do you handle that the Semitic graves were found at Avaris? When they dug it up and they found that old city and they found a tomb with a figure in there that didn't look like a regular Egyptian but had lighter skin and red hair and a multicolored coat.
What would I need to explain from that? I don't understand.
This is proof that the Jews, the Hebrew people, descended from Jacob and Abraham, were in Egypt.
I don't have any issue that there may have been a descendant of maybe a guy named Jacob who maybe made it to Egypt and died. I don't have any issue with that. I don't see what that has to do with anything.
Because it's not just some guy made it to Egypt. This guy he had his own Egyptian tomb. They didn't give tombs to everybody. This guy had to be very important to receive a pyramid-shaped tomb in the land of Avaris, where he has a pharaoh-like statue of himself, and it was done in a way that actually describes the biblical Joseph. And it had no bones in it, just like was said inside the Torah, that his bones would be removed from that grave and brought back to the land of Israel. It lends credence to what is recorded in that history.
And are we able to actually show that tomb belonged to Joseph? Or is that something that we're just kind of saying might be possible?
Okay, so let's think of it this way. One, when you're trying to if you want to even just result to educated guess, he didn't look like an Egyptian. He had lighter skin, he had red hair, and he had a multicolored coat. All of that is a description of Joseph recorded in Scripture, and that he was, besides the Pharaoh, he was second in command of all of Egypt. And the type of tomb that he had, that was there, found in Avaris, is exactly the type that would be for the second in command type of person. It would have all the honor and prestige that would be for that status. It fits, and it fits the timeline. It fits everything. It fits the carbon dating. It was surrounding of Semitic graves along with it.
So I keep looking. I'm looking to see where any information is on the tomb of Joseph in Egypt, and I can't find anything that says that there was a tomb for Joseph found in Egypt.
Yeah,
I keep seeing that there's no archaeological evidence that's establishing a tomb as Joseph's.
Yeah, well, just go look up the tomb in Avaris that was found with a statue with the colored coat. Because let me tell you something. Would you happen to believe that people have biases, right? Would you agree?
Would I agree that what?
That people have biases.
Biases? Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, let me ask you something. If people have bias, and if there's an atheist archaeologist who does not want to lend credence to anything that they find, even if all the things point to, hey, listen, this is something that really points to this guy Joseph, because it has all the fixings, everything that points to it, yet I don't want to acknowledge it because that would give too much credence to the Bible, and I don't want to do that. Can you believe? Is it possible?
Then they should be fired. Then they should be fired.
I do agree with that.
It's not an archaeologist's job. That's not their job. That's not what archaeologists do. They just make the discoveries and show their findings.
That's not true at all. They always put their bias into it. They always do. And even when they have found all sorts of evidence, to that the dating of the kingdoms of Egypt is wrong, they won't change it. They have specifically said they won't change the dating because it would change too many other things, even though there's so much evidence that they were wrong on the original dating. Go look that up. It's literally, they said, no, we're not going to change it because it will change too many other things. Even though the dating system that they have, and then like the dating of their kingdoms, is completely off. I mean, come on now. Like they found a papyrus written by an Egyptian who was writing about going through all these different and listing these plagues in which were happening in Egypt. And all those plagues, written by an Egyptian point of view, are the same plagues that are recorded in Scripture that God put upon Egypt for what they did. It's from an Egyptian point of view, and it's exactly the same plagues. They found it, like 5 years ago? A papyrus. And it lists, and it's from an Egyptian point of view. He's like, oh my gosh, all this stuff is happening in our land. I don't know what to do. It's like everybody's dying. All this stuff is happening. They have hail coming from the sky. All the cows are dying. There's frogs everywhere. It's all from an Egyptian point of view on this papyrus, and he wrote about these plagues.
Yeah, so I wrote down the papyrus thing because I wanted to take a look at that on my break because I do have just a few moments left here. But I did look into the statue. So I found the links that talk about how a statue of a ruler in Avaris was found and is depicted with a coat of 3 colors, black, red, and white. Not many colors, but that in no way has been linked to Joseph, and that in no way has been said to be Joseph.
Okay, they found paint on the face that would be a depiction of somebody with lighter skin, and
okay.
They found also red paint on the head, which would show red hair. Now that's the description of Joseph in the Scripture, and a coat of multiple colors. Okay, now you can go and haggle. Oh, many colors should be 15, but
no, I'm just saying that three is not a lot of colors. It's you know.
Let me ask you something. You think, rewind the clock back to 1600 BC, right? For them to have one color on one clothing would have been one hell of a feat. To have 2 would have been monumental. To have 3 would have been insane because of how they had to get the colors back then. And you're going to have to agree to that because that's just history. It was very difficult to have many different colors on a cloak, more than just one. When you're having more than just one, that means like it's a status. It's something that it's a status of prestige. And you have to understand that because that's how it was in 1600 BC. It's not like they had Walmart, okay?
I'm also trying to find out where in the Bible does it talk about Joseph's description?
Because it's in the scripts, it's throughout in the book of Genesis.
Do you happen to know where? Because I'm looking for it and I can't find it.
I'm driving off the top of my head.
It's all right. You can if you find it, if you could send it to me, I would greatly appreciate it.
It's in Genesis. It's also the same color that his uncle was also with the red hair.
But does it say that? Does it say his hair was red, or that it was like the color of his red-headed relative?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. When you find that, if you could send that to me, that would be great.
In the Hebrew, it uses the word ruddy for his hair.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
And he was it was a very good-looking guy, and he was like different than the Egyptians. He was different than other people, and he stood out. So like.
Well, I definitely think that we have gone through enough to say that there is a tomb for someone who was not Egypt-born in Egypt. That's the most that we can go through with this. You could say that you think it's Joseph, and I think that's cool. But we don't have any archaeological evidence that says it is Joseph.
There's more evidence that it leans towards this was the historical Joseph. It also lends credence to the fact that there's more credence to the fact that there were plagues in Egypt, because it's not just written by the Hebrew people, it's written by an Egyptian as well. We also, the conquest of the Hebrew people coming out of Egypt is also recorded by the Canaanites, who were sending letters to the Egyptian Pharaoh asking for help because the Habiru are coming. The Habiru are destroying our land. The Habiru are destroying our cities and they're taking our land. Please help us, help us. There's letters from all these different Canaanite kings asking the Egyptian Pharaoh for help because the Habiru have invaded our land and are taking all our land. They're taking our land, they're taking our homes, and we need your help. There are letters from all these different Canaanite kings to the Egyptian Pharaoh asking for help. We have the land of Jericho. It was described to have been destroyed in a very specific way. And when they excavated it, they found it to be destroyed exactly the same way in which it was destroyed. Okay, there's so much evidence. They thought that David didn't exist. And then they found a stele talking about the city of David. They didn't think Samson existed, and then they started finding also. They found mosaics talking about Samson.
I definitely think that there's enough evidence from my study to say that there was most likely a King David, but I know that even that itself is kind of shaky. Just simply having a city of David doesn't mean David the guy existed. But I've got no issue saying that there was probably a king named David.
They don't name a city. They don't name a city after with a person's name unless there's actually a person there. That's just how things were done back then.
But I think that from the evidence that we do have, that the greatness of David is greatly exaggerated by the Bible.
Why is that?
Because from the archaeological evidence that we have, we see more of like small farming towns and stuff like that would be quote unquote have been seen under the city of David or the kingdom of David at that time, and not anything that really shows this great
kingdom of David. Yeah, the kingdom of David. They didn't even have a temple in Jerusalem yet, and his land or his they didn't even have a castle. It was just a ziggurat type of home. Not even a ziggurat. It was like basically baked clay stones that made his home with open roofs. It's described right in there. It is nothing saying that it was some extravagant palace. It was just a regular home, just like every other thing. There was no extravagance described for David. It was his son Solomon who would build the majesty of Israel in the land of Israel. And that is testified by other cultures as well in the land of Canaan to the fact of them selling Solomon all the material to build his temple. That's actually backed up by history. What Solomon did.
Okay, so again, I really don't think that we are disagreeing here too much. It seems like we're pretty much on the same plans here. All right, so the only thing is, it seems like you're taking things a couple extra steps, and I think that goes back to what you were saying earlier with everyone has their bias. I'm stopping where the evidence just shows, where it says, I think that we can lean towards this or lean towards that. The rest I don't know, and you're making that extra step of this is Joseph's tomb. This is how we know that the Bible is shown to be true, and I don't know how we're taking that extra step. But
it's not about taking an extra. It's not about taking an extra step. It's about, hey, listen, this is what's saying that this happened. Joseph was in Egypt. This is what his description was. He was second in command of Egypt at that time, and if that's true, there should be evidence that his tomb would have been there. That there should be evidence that the Hebrew people were there, and there should have been evidence that he had the status that he did.
But we don't have evidence that he was there.
So that, what are you talking about?
we don't have the evidence that Joseph was there. We have a guy that you think matches his description, but is unnamed, which is kind of weird. If he was, as you were saying, this whole big status thing, second ruler of command, of course we would know. Well, it doesn't say that his name is Joseph. It doesn't say that he was an Israelite.
You know what else was found there in Avaris, though? Huge pits for grain storage, which were uncommon.
So they buried him with his grain?
No, but I'm saying there was grain silos there, which was unheard of, and nothing like that was there. But it was, and they've even done the calculation of how much grain those silos would have held, and it would have been enough for the 7-year famine.
Okay, is there a way that we can connect the grain silos that were found to the grave of the person that was there?
It's there in Avaris.
Yeah, but what is the connection between that and the grave of the ruler?
It's in the same area. He's not buried where the pharaohs are, where the kings are. He's buried in the place in which he managed. That's the whole thing. That's exactly what says the scripture.
That Joseph was buried in Egypt amongst the grain silos?
Yes, where they were living, where they told him.
Where does it say that Joseph was buried amongst the grain silos?
The grain silos were in the land in which he was governing. That's what's recorded in Genesis. And when he died, he was buried in that time. That's where he was buried. And that's why it says that, hey, listen, when I die, when you leave and enter into the land of our fathers, take my bones with you. That's the common practice of people like in that time. Like they would be buried in that land. That's why the Semitic and the Hebrew people are buried right there in Avaris, because that's where they died, that's where they lived, that's where they died.
So Genesis simply ends with he died, was embalmed, and placed in a coffin in Egypt. It doesn't talk about him being, or where he was buried in Egypt at all.
It says exactly where he was, because in the whole book talking about where Joseph was, who he was going to see, what Pharaoh was at that time, where the Hebrew people went. It's exactly where they went to go dig. They knew exactly where to dig based upon what was recorded in Genesis. So when they arrived, they said, okay, we're going to dig here. And when they dug, they went, oh, hey, here's the place. It's old ancient Avaris, and here's these Semitic graves. And here's this tomb that we have found right where we would expect Joseph to be, buried with his people. Oh, hey, look, there's grain silos. Joseph was controlling the grain silos. That's what he was doing, and here it is. If you want the Bible to have predictive power, this is what it is. The archaeologists said, okay, if Joseph existed and this story is accurate, we should find, in place of Pi-Ramesses, we should find an ancient city where Joseph lived and where Hebrew people lived, and we should find it. And it all should relate to the stories that are recorded in the Hebrew people. So they went there, they dug, they found Avaris, they found the tomb which is depicting a man that had multiple colored coats with red hair. They found grain silos, they found Semitic graves. It all matched what was recorded in the Hebrew history.
So what I see is that Avaris was the capital of Egypt during the Hycosis period and was located in the northeastern part of the Nile Delta, and that it was a hub of important trade for trade routes during the sea and the land, and that grain was a big form of currency. So if it was the capital of this area, or of Egypt during this time period, it makes perfect sense why there would be a lot of grain silos. It was a very huge part of their culture and the way that they did life.
Because that's exactly what was recorded in history. Because it became
Joseph isn't needed for that.
What? No, it's exactly what would happen. This is the thing that kills me about atheists. It's like laid out in a line, laying it out. You just read that, right? And that's exactly what is recorded in the scriptures that say, hey, we need to be the hub for the support system for this entire region because we're having 7 years of famine. So we need to make silos to hold all the grain, and you just read that, and yet you don't want to connect the dots. Like, oh my gosh, yep, this actually goes along.
Because I don't want to connect dots if they're not, if there's nothing.
No, but the problem is that you're being like a typical atheist. That unless it says in stamps with fingerprints, "Hey, I'm Joseph. This is my place. Stay off my land," you're not going to believe it. But anybody who has a rational brain is going to be like, you know what? If this is true in what the Bible is saying, then we should find the grain silos. This should have been the hub in which is going to be shipping out grain and giving grain to all these different communities as it's being listed. This is going to be a tomb there for the guy who's organizing all this stuff, who's second in Egypt, and he's going to be treated like a pharaoh, though not being a pharaoh. And there's going to be Semitic graves there. But you know what? Go ahead. Your skepticism, so-called, is not skepticism. It's cynicism. Because here it is laid out in a line, giving you predictive power to say, hey, listen, let's have an archaeological dig site, and let's go see if this actually is what was recorded there. And it was. That's exactly what they found. They found everything. They saw it in scripture. They made a prediction. If it's true, we should be able to go there and find all these things. What you just read is a conclusion made because of the fact that these archaeologists went there because of the behest of what was in scripture. They went there, and they found the place. They dug it up and said, yep, this actually is the same thing. But you have Egyptian atheists that are archaeologists over there that don't want to actually give credence to it and say, yeah, actually the Bible was true. Why? Because of the fact that they don't want to give credence to the Bible. It's the same reason why they do not let anybody take anything from the Red Sea. They will not let anybody take anything from the Red Sea and they'll be arrested. It's because of the fact that there's evidence down there, but they won't let anybody take it. And these are the people who are in charge. You make it
sound like there's some kind of grand conspiracy.
There is, dude. It's called cynicism and people going against that. Because once you go against that and you show, hey, listen, you know what? You're wrong on this. Their entire career is tainted. Their entire career, their credibility is shot. Nobody will trust them as far as they can throw them because you know what? They're wrong. They were telling everybody for years, nope, that's not true. It's a fable. It's not real. And yet they're wrong.
So here's the thing. That's what's going to happen. Their whole career is going to be gone. I don't think anyone should care what an archaeologist says or anything like that. I think that we should only care about what they can show. So I don't care if an archaeologist shows me something and then gives me their own opinion that has nothing to do with what they're showing me that they actually found. From what we can see of what we found is that there was this important area, so it makes a lot of sense why there are grain silos. And
no, dude, they didn't know it.
Hold on, please. I let you go on for a long time. I'm asking you that you show me the same.
Because, dude, you're not even farming your argument properly.
How do you know? You won't even let me speak.
Because, dude, the point is that a virus was not even known. Nobody knew about it. It was not even an inkling in people's mind. But people reasoned that if the Bible is true, they should find something. And they went there, and it was covered in 40, 50 feet of dirt. They had to go excavate. They had no idea it existed. The conclusion that you're reading is only based upon the fact that people reasoning and making a prediction based upon what is recorded in Scripture went there and found exactly what the Bible said was going to be there. You're not getting that. The Bible said it was going to be there, and it was there. They dug it up exactly where it said it was going to be.
Yeah, I don't really
that's
care.
What you're not getting.
So I think it makes perfect logical sense.
That's why you become.
I think it makes perfect logical sense that this book that does hold some real things about the ancient world, that, yeah, sure, a place may have had some things. But that doesn't mean that the other things in the Bible are true, like things like the resurrection and things like that. But that's a completely different subject. The only thing that I'm getting here is,
and you know what?
through the evidence of... May I please actually finish what I'm saying? May I please finish what I'm saying?
I'm trying to rush because I got to get going.
Yeah, I have to get going too, and I'm trying... I've let you speak for a long time. I'm asking for the same mutual respect. Can you do that? Are you capable?
Shoot it. Go.
Thank you. All I'm saying is that the evidence that I have seen from the things that you have brought, and I have no problem doing more further research on it, because I will, is that what we can conclude from the evidence is that At this time period, this was a very busy point or place for Egypt. It was a capital. It makes a lot of sense why there are grain silos. You brought me the evidence that there is a tomb for a guy who is not Egyptian. That's great. Love it. I don't have the final connections to try to connect to the dots of, therefore, it was Joseph, and everything that the Bible said about what happened with Joseph is true.
Why was there Semitic graves there?
I already said in the beginning that I had no problem with the fact that there were some Hebrews that lived in Egypt. So if that's the case, then of course there would be Semitic
in that
graves there.
place.
It makes sense.
But my friend, all right, listen. This is the place specifically said in Scripture in which the Hebrew people were going to live. After the time of Joseph, his family got brought in. And he says, this is where you're going to live. Okay? This was Bible making a prediction. We're reading it now, and we go, okay, well, if that's the case, then this should be Hebrew people, a place of Hebrew people. And it was. That's the thing, like, it just boggles my mind. Atheists want predictability of the scriptures, and yet here it is, time and time again. Like, I don't know how old you are, but I recall, and there's even video footage of when there was an earthquake, right? And it exposed something very odd in the land of Turkey. And it was seen by an astronaut when he was doing land surveying. And he said, what the heck is that? Yes, and it was found. It was found.
It was not.
It was found. They had it all mapped up. There's photography. There's
sonar. As of 2022, the Institute for Creation Research, so Christians, admit that the Ark has not been found, and that what you're talking about is a natural rock formation. So
listen,
that's not even an atheist source. This is Christians. No. Even Answers in Genesis will admit that the Ark has not been found.
Okay. Ken Ham is not the appeal to authority that you want to go with there. I don't care about what Ken Ham says because he. Well, that's what you just did. That's what you just did.
because you got all upset about the biases of atheist sources. I'm telling you that even Christians will admit that the Ark has not been found.
And I will tell you that people like Answers in Genesis are not people who speak for history. They don't want to speak for everybody. They got a lot of wild, crazy ideas. But when you actually just
Christians go... But there are Christians who admit that the Ark has not been found. Who gives a crap?
I don't care. What I'm saying is...
So then what is the evidence that you have that shows that Noah's Ark has actually been found, given all these atheist and Christian sources that show that it has not been?
Okay, for one, you have the testimonies of people who have been saying that they've been pulling wood off of that damn thing for thousands of years. You have records. Let me keep on going.
The first point,
dude. You want me to list?
I'm asking you to clarify.
I'm talking to you.
Your first thing was testimonies.
There are villages.
So testimonies of who, and where can I find these testimonies?
You can go testimonies with the villages around that area, around Mount Ararat. Where it was found, they testify that they've been pulling wood off of it for a while to build their own homes. That's one. Two, let me finish. Two, you have the fact that when it was found, it was sonar mapped, right? And all the rivets of the boat were found, and they saw it laid out, and it was exactly the same size and when it was recorded in scripture, and it became a national monument in Turkey, and it was hailed by the government, and it was all sorts of hundreds of researchers there, hundreds of scientists checking it out. There's so many expeditions that went out to go look at it, but it was exposed to the elements, and it has disintegrated after time because of the fact that it's so old and now it's exposed to the elements. It has disintegrated over the last 50, 60, 70 years. Okay?
I'm looking it up. I can't find any single testimonies that people have been pulling wood off this. I also think that it's very contradictory. Hold on. I want to address your other points.
Does not count.
I'm sorry. I'm going to do more research, but I'm saying what I'm seeing now. This is what I see. Now, your other point is that I see that it's contradictory to say that people have been pulling wood from this for years, but now magically, suddenly, it's disintegrated so much that we can't look at it anymore. That doesn't make any sense.
Do you not know how wood reacts to the elements? Is that what it is?
Yes, and I'm saying that if people have been pulling wood from it for years, then it would have disintegrated years ago.
No,
we wouldn't have even been able to have the situation now. But the problem is that you're giving me more claims.
This is the problem. This is the problem with atheists. They get their ass, their head up their ass. This is just driving me nuts.
This is your bias talking. This is your bias.
No, dude, because of the fact that, listen, I'm telling
you're the one here that's generalizing all atheists. You are literally showing a bias when
you're doing
that.
Exactly what every atheist does. Got their head firmly up their butt. They don't want to look at anything.
What? Looking up your claims? I'm literally looking up your claims.
No,
you can't say I'm not looking things up.
You're taking 2 seconds, and you're making a judgment call. No, there's no evidence because you can't find it in 2 seconds.
Did I say there was no evidence? No, I said I don't see anything that shows the testimony claims that you say that there are.
Okay.
So I'm going to keep looking for it.
Okay.
But I'm saying that from what I see now, I don't see anything.
There are ancient records going back thousands of years of people making trips to Noah's Ark. There are ancient records of people who are pulling wood off of that for their village, make their houses.
Where can I find these records? Where can I find them?
Go look them up, guy. Dude,
I'm trying to. I'm literally trying to.
I don't know. Go read a book, dude. I don't know.
What book?
Go read them right now.
What book? I'll read it right now. What book?
The one up your ass.
Okay, you see what you're doing here? I'm asking you to give the validation for your claims, and you're saying, I don't know. And then when I tell you that I'm looking it up and I don't see the validation for your claims, you get mad at me for looking it up and then tell me to look it up.
The cynicism in you
is ridiculous. You're being contradictory.
No, I'm not. I'm telling you to spend as much time as I have looking this crap up, and that's why I know what truth is. You want to have a determination.
If you knew what truth was, you would be able to show me where these records are.
Oh, yeah, because everybody carries around every goddamn thing. You're an idiot, dude. You're such an idiot.
You're welcome to your opinion. That means nothing to me. So
yeah, because you're just full
of
cynicism.
So what I gathered from here is that you came in here judging me and other atheists for being biased, and you gave evidence that you can't actually back up to make the conclusion that you want it to be.
Go do the research, dude. It's out there.
So I am doing the research. I'm
you're doing 2 seconds of research. You're out of your mind. 2 seconds of research. Go spend some time, dude. Spend years looking up all this stuff. All right.
I've actually spent years looking into the Noah's Ark thing, but you won't even try to talk to me about that,
dude.
So
nobody carries.
So because I have done all of this study for the, I gave you a source for the Ark. Have you given me a single source for the Ark? I've given you a source for the Ark.
Dude, I'm sitting in my van waiting to leave and go do something tonight. I don't carry around every damn evidence with me everywhere.
That's fine. It was in my head. I memorized it. I memorized the source for the Ark. So, you don't have a single source in your mind?
I really had to.
No, I said the Institute for Creation Research.
Yeah.
As of 2022, the Institute for Creation Research.
See, the problem is that you're just full of cynicism. The problem is that
I'm sorry that you're combative with other Christians. That's not my fault. I'm sorry that
the problem is that you are full of cynicism. You don't even want to take some time and say, okay, let me go do that. I'll go spend some time.
Do you know how many times I've said I am going to do more research on the things you said because I find them interesting? I've said it about 5 times, and you choose to ignore it. This is your bias. You just keep showing over and over again that you are biased. I'm the one willing to do the research and look into what you're saying, and you're the one that's saying, "Oh, you're cynicism."
No, listen, buddy. I'm getting ticked because here you are, and I'm told you I'm ready
There's
to go
no
do
reason
something.
to be upset.
Let me finish because of the fact that you're saying, "Give me the evidence, give me the evidence, give me." I'm in a freaking car right now, and you can't even say, "All right, well, if that's true,
how about this?
I would be able to find it."
Yeah, and I'm sorry that asking you to assist me in finding out your claims is too
much.
Dude,
I'm in a friggin' car right now.
I understand. You know what
damn thing.
Do you know what the mature thing to do instead of yelling would be? It would be, okay, how about this? When I have time later tonight, I will help and I will send you the sources that I'm talking about. And I would say thank you.
I don't have time
appreciate
to
your time
your
and
hand.
Okay, well
then
I don't have time to talk to you if you're not going to be honest with me. Are you?
I am
Are you
being
going
honest
to
with you.
actually be? Are you going to engage in good faith with me, or are you just going to keep screaming when it's unnecessary?
Dude, I'm telling you, this is out there. I've seen it. I've read it. I know it's there. You don't have to trust
help
me.
me find
just
it.
invest it. With everything else I gotta do, I don't know if I have the time to do this and do this for you.
So you have time to come up and scream at me for 40 minutes, but you don't have time to take 2 minutes to find a source that you have already found and just send it to me on a message?
Dude, I
That's
did this
called
on a
lazy.
ride home.
That's called lazy, man.
See, this is you being a dick. I was on a ride home and talking to you.
You're the one that's been screaming and insulting me this whole time, but I'm being a dick? Are you crazy?
You just called me lazy.
No, I did not call you lazy. I said that the action that you are doing is lazy. There's a big difference.
Freaking pain in the ass.
I'm so sorry that you're incapable of having a decent conversation if it causes you to scream like that. So I think that you and I should both calm down, relax, and this is what I'm going to leave you with. This is what I'm going to leave you with. I will do further research on the things that you said because, again, for the 6th time, I do find it interesting. Oh my gosh, wow, and he left. Anyway, Jesus saved. I will continue to do the research on it because I do find it interesting. There it is for the 7th time. And I expect that if you actually care about the things you're saying, you will send me a message with the sources that you have. Because I will look them up, and if I don't find anything, there's nothing else I can really do about it.